My name is Gail Killen, and I have owned 8572 Main Street since July of 2010. I've spent the last 10 years getting to know my neighbors and learning the history of the community. After each flash flood, I visit each home and take note of how they were affected. I keep a log. The homes in the West End, sacrificed by this plan, are my neighbors, and it's important to know that even if they are not technically located inside the historic district, they are the gateway to historic Ellicott City. The former owners and renters of more than a dozen proposed demolitions represent a heritage population that cannot speak for themselves because Howard County has preemptively imposed buyout. The willful neglect and then premature purchase of these heritage homes has interrupted generational wealth accumulated. And even though all but 4 of these are saved from demolition, the community continues to suffer from demolition by neglect. Is the Army Corps requiring proponents of demolition to use sufficient rigor in verifying accuracy of models? Is the Army Corps confident that the high-flow bypass culverts used at 8777 and 8600 Main Street would not increase velocity and destruction in the community? Have the limitations listed in the December 2019 review been appropriately resolved? Or do they remain as outstanding gaps in necessary information? The installation of culverts inside the working floodplain will result in increased velocity and flow. Why install a new set of culverts at a considerable expense when a whole range of maintenance is neglected? Howard County Department of Public Works will promote the claim that the 8600 culvert is the biggest threat to safety and risk. But that's nothing more than an empty mantra. The overflow at the 8600 culvert was caused by filling it with shotcrete after the 2011 flash flood, reducing the culvert from 108 inches to 84 inches. And the degradation surrounding it was caused by removal of trees and a floodplain wall. We have ample opportunity to slow the flow and direct runoff into detention areas. This town was literally made to move water. The benefit of using natural flows and buffers is a slower flow that preserves the resilience of the entire historic community. These measures are not only simple in concept, they are far less costly than adding expensive culverts, sacrificing working floodplain, and demolishing historical treasures. The picture on the left shows the limit of disturbance for the 8600 project was marked before the 2016 flash flood. The failure of this historic floodplain wall caused flash flood waters to scour the earth between Main Street and my home in the 2016 flash flood. The 1809 foundation was exposed more than 6 feet below grade. The underside of Main Street washed into my basement workshop through a coal chute that was exposed when scouring rapids cut the earth out from under a concrete barrier. Sediment and debris accumulation is slowly pushing the Hudson Branch away from West End service and toward historic homes. The 8600 culvert plunge pool has remained clogged since the 2011 flash flood, and the channel continuously fills with erosion, causing flash flood waters to accelerate toward historic homes along the south bank and downstream. The loss of vegetation in this area has caused literal tons of erosion. The second and third floor apartments of this home have remained occupied almost entirely without interruption through all 3 devastating flash floods. and all 3 apartment homes continue to be occupied today. The velocity of runoff from the south hillside is a significant threat at this location, as flow naturally crosses Main Street and fills the floodplain in this very spot. This unfortunate heritage building has been set up for disaster, but 8590 can be made resilient, affordably and with relative ease. The home as it is completely defenseless. The parking lot, road, and sidewalk are all on the same level, which means all this pavement accelerates high velocity flow directly into the sill plate right at the top of the foundation. In addition to the 8600 culvert being filled with shotcrete and inducing overflow, there is a high velocity torrent coming from the development access road at 8600 that scours the southwest facing corner of this home. This home is a good example of the many heritage buildings connected to the South Hillside. Homes backing to the South Hillside like this one require mitigation from behind and a knee wall with drainage between the front door and main. This modernized historic home is an example of the resilience that can be achieved inside this valley community. Main Street is continuously repaved without regard to the impact of high-speed runoff. These runoff ramps accelerate high-speed floodwater into historic buildings, often where the foundation meets footers and wood framing. Our entire community suffers from accelerated flow down our steep slopes. Nearly every home built into the South Hillside is beaten from behind. The 8600 culvert project does not slow this flow. Instead, it ignores this problem and adds more water faster. This plan sacrifices resilient heritage homes on day one and countless more as real mitigation efforts continue to be neglected. This plan ignores the relevance of natural flow and usefulness of resources. From ridge to river, our hillsides drop runoff aggressively into tributaries. In less than 2 miles, we have more than a 200-foot drop in elevation. In a standard urban environment, it is common to enlarge culverts and collect as much water as quickly as possible. The goal is to accelerate water into channels and enlarge those channels as much as the location permits. But here in Ellicott City's Milltown, that industry standard has lethal consequences. When we understand that velocity is what is most destructive in historic Ellicott City, then it's much easier to understand why this site at 8600 is such a blessing. It is a natural detention area that happens to be located right in the path of one of our most potentially destructive tributaries. In order to manage risks to historic community, no additional conveyance should be permitted until after existing flood risk management features are restored and additional detention projects are introduced and working effectively. There is no excuse for permitting acceleration. Gravity is already accelerating more than we can handle. We must dedicate effort to slowing the flow. This culvert crossing offers sufficient retention opportunity via riparian buffer land management. We are able to limit velocity at the historic home and farther downstream as well. Accelerating flow here risks not only this home, but also the heritage homes in the vicinity, as well as those downstream. If the channel behind this home must be widened, let it remove the neighbor's garage out back. not this amazing and beautiful heritage home. And for the sake of all that is right and good, please let us return this inheritance back to the Hammond family better than we found it. This is a plan that will remove water from above rapidly, which serves interests above, but adds risk to those downstream. Interest in preservation requires that we understand the high-velocity runoff threats to the historic community. If our goal is to slow the flow and preserve the historic town, then this plan works against that purpose. We need focus on increasing floodplains, increasing detention, increasing vegetation everywhere possible, and maintaining working features such as floodplain walls and plunge pools. This plan abandons all that we know to be effective flood risk management. The additional culverts not only add the cubic foot per second equivalent of a 115-inch pipe, the velocity is further accelerated by a drop in slope that is almost 2 feet greater than the original culvert. The entire historic community downstream benefits from using 8600 for detention. This site can support detention through increased storm intensity as well as continued development in the region. Instead of all of these pipes going around the trucking company, bypassing floodplain and demolishing homes now, destroying more homes later, we can go straight across the street with a much shorter set of pipes and use the 8 to 12 acres for detention. That's 2 of the 108-inch pipes at 100-foot length. That's far less costly than 4 66-inch pipes at 700-foot lengths, plus 700 foot of a new 108-inch pipe. Land remediation funds exist at the state and federal level, and use as a park can bring sustainable income. The 8500 block regularly floods Main Street, even in small rain events. In storm surges, heritage homes are scoured by high-velocity flow from the south hillside. Accelerating flow into the 8500 block from the 8600 culvert is not an option, but detention is an option, and existing floodplains have gone abandoned, but they can be recovered with an effort that could be as simple as a large volunteer workforce with shovels, buckets, and plants. The soils removed from the floodplains could then be used to build a berm along Main Street. There's too much opportunity to improve flow for us to give up and let this beautiful and meaningful place cease to exist. My home, 8572 Main Street, survived the 2018 flash flood with no water entering the home. I am not as confident that I will be able to protect it from the threat that the current 8600 project presents. My confidence in the resiliency of heritage stone and framed structures comes from firsthand experience. The basement of my home flooded in 2011 and 2016, but not in 2018. Believe me when I say I have studied the flow of water here and it can be managed. And please believe me when I say that it should not be accelerated. I repeat, we cannot afford to accelerate flow in Ellicott City. What destroys us the most is water all coming down at once. And it's not just large storm events. Our channels and the ground beneath us swell from everyday storms on the ridges above us. It doesn't even have to rain here for our channels to swell to their banks. It is so important that we focus on slowing the flow for today's community and for generations to come. If you have any questions or would like a copy of this, please find my email at the bottom of this screen and feel welcome to reach out. Thank you for caring for Historic Ellicott City, Maryland.